Okay, everyone, welcome to the Art of TradeStation, finding, tracking, and trading IPOs and SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies. I am David Russell, VP of Market Intelligence here at TradeStation Group. Before we get started, I wanted to share some links with you so you can start downloading them and working on them. This first link is going to be a zip file. Now, some of you guys know how this works at TradeStation. The zip file contains an ELD and a workspace. You first run the ELD, then you load the workspace. I also wanted to share just the blog that I right here on at TradeStation is Market Insights, and I wanted to share where we post ideas on TradingView. If you guys just want to just get these links and save them, then we'll reference them later. Okay, great. So first, the following presentation is for educational purposes only. All symbols and trading ideas discussed by the instructors are for demonstrational purposes only and are not recommendations. This presentation is not an offer or solicitation of any kind in any jurisdiction where any TradeStation affiliate is not authorized to do business, including but not limited to Hong Kong and Japan. Active trading is not suitable for everyone. Options and futures trading carries a high degree of risk and is not suitable for all traders. Please read the disclosure information handout or the electronic disclosure information available on the TradeStation website. Okay, great. So very quickly, I did want to mention some of the things I do here at TradeStation. This is the Market Insights blog, and post a lot of things on here, just various trends in the market, and also we publish ideas here on TradingView. Now, TradingView is an outside charting service that can be linked to your TradeStation account. You guys might find some of these things interesting. I did want to mention one thing I thought was interesting that really did stand out to me right now was this kind of bearish line on the Nasdaq right now. We're just in this interesting sort of phase where there's been a shift, obviously toward these more cyclical names because of like a vaccine and stuff. And I think it's just important to realize just some of the pressure facing a lot of these big Nasdaq stocks. And just to realize, like, if we were to see some downside and pullback in the market, to recognize kind of where the Nasdaq is standing right now, and the fact that there has been rotation away from it. I also want to mention today that there was some really massive selling I thought was interesting in things like utilities, and in particular, which are sensitive to interest rates. So we're starting to see an unwind of this sort of idea of interest rates being low for a long time and all of that. And while on one hand, that is positive, it also has bad implications for a range of companies, things like utilities, consumer staples, a lot of these companies that had benefited for a long time. So we're seeing a lot of rotation now. I write about that a lot on Market Insights, and there's going to be more there. And also, I'll mention, I think it's very interesting. I have a story here today about General Motors. There's been some real interesting strength in the auto sector, and it's kind of interesting because a lot of these IPOs and SPACs are very much oriented toward autos. So there's a lot of interesting things happening now with autos. So I just want to let you know all those things are going to be covered in coming weeks and everything on Market Insights. So just so you know, that is there. Okay, good. Now, as we look at the zip file that I just shared with you, this is what you should see. Okay, so when you open it, you should see these two different things. You should see this thing called an ELD with like this kind of greenish triangle icon. So first you want to double click on that. And what it's going to do is it's going to import indicators into TradeStation. And it's going to take you through a few dialog boxes. It's going to say, do you want to import them? Here's my TradeStation. Okay. Oops, I got to close this first. Sorry. All right. It'll say like, oh, boom, you're importing indicators. Then you click on next. And then these are the things you're going to be bringing into your TradeStation. I already have them, so I'm not going to do that, but you would hit finish. It might ask you one or two more things, and then it'll be through. After that, when it says it was successfully imported, then you want to go to this workspace, which will use a lot of those. And this is what you're going to be looking at. So it is this. This is essentially a list of stocks that have short histories. So what we're really looking at here is we're looking for ways to find companies that don't have a lot of price history. That's going to be the easiest way to quickly find some of these, the SPACs and the IPOs. So that's first. Now let's take a look at this now. When we think about it, it's pretty amazing when you think that this year had the fastest bull market, bear market in history, the fastest correction in history, and we still have the second biggest year of IPO volume. It's up 47% from last year, according to Renaissance Capital. It's still below 2014, which I think was the year we had Alibaba. And it's kind of ironic because the only reason we're below that is because this Alibaba listing, Ant Group, listed in Shanghai. And then they had all kinds of other issues. But one way or another, obviously we're looking at a time right now when there's a lot of interest. We have these companies like Snowflake, Airbnb, is going to be going public. We just found out today that another electric car company called Arrival, there's an article here, is going to go public via a SPAC. And this is just an interesting one you guys might want to look at. So anyway, then at the same time, the SPAC volume is up 350% above last year. It's a record high, and the deal size is 50% higher, according to this website called SPAC Data. So a SPAC, just very quickly to mention this, and I'm not going to get into a lot of the legalities and the technicalities about all this, but initial public offering is the more traditional way a company enters public markets. They essentially go to investment banks, and then the investment banks put together a list of institutional buyers, as you guys know, and then they issue it at a certain price. Then it starts trading, and it's done via very much via Wall Street. The idea of an SPAC, of a SPAC, special purpose acquisition company, you have a private company that exists, and somebody forms a shell company. And the shell company sells shares, raises capital, and then it buys the target company and takes the target company public through that kind of merger. Usually that has one ticker to begin, and then the ticker changes later. There's differences in a lot of the legal processes, the filing, all that stuff. There's debates between which is better and which is not. From my perspective, it's more a question of understanding that there is an appetite for new companies and they want to come to market, and there's different ways of doing it. And, from our perspective as investors and traders, we're interested in finding those companies. I'm not interested in trying to debate whether SPACs are the right thing to do or IPOs are right or anything like that. For a lot of companies like this, we really, there's so many different issues with a lot of them, learning about them and everything, that it's hard to make any kind of blanket statement. So I wanted to say that from my perspective, the thing is that right now we're in a situation where there's something of a bull market of stocks. There's a whole bunch of innovative companies coming to market. And we see that especially with things like ESG investing. I mean, it's important to realize right now that ExxonMobil got kicked out of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We see this entire transformation in the market of people embracing things like, we know, Tesla, but also NIO and these other electric cars. We see a real transformation of the stock market. In some ways, I would argue that this is something similar to the 1920s, when you saw industrial companies like IBM and General Electric and General Motors, displace the railroads and the utility companies that were the mainstays of the market. I think we're in this kind of new market, and it's going to have implications for the long term. That's how it seems to be playing out. So when you put all that together, you realize that we're in a new market and new companies are popping up. And I think the most important thing to realize is that we don't always have the best ways of finding them right away. We might rely on different news sources, different analysts and things, and a lot of people are going to miss different things. So the thing is we can find them using TradeStation, and we can be ahead of what analysts and news services and all these other people might be finding. And that's the great thing about TradeStation. The method I'm going to be showing you is not perfect. It will find some companies that, for example, are spin-offs. Like, it's going to show Match, which was this whole spinoff, and there's some other spinoffs. There was Honeywell and Carrier. You're going to see a few of these pop up, but the key thing is that most of these things popping up are going to be IPOs and SPACs. So that's essentially, I want to just show what we're looking for is we're looking for new companies, and the way to do that is to scan on TradeStation for companies without a lot of history. All right. So in order to do that, we have some some indicators, and the main one we're using today is called IPO tool. It has an exclamation point first, and then it's called IPO tool. Okay. All right. People said they don't see the zip file. I'm going to share it again. You know, I kind of think maybe I should post it a few times. This seems to happen sometimes in Zoom, and if you join late, you might not see things. I do apologize for that. Okay, so if you guys ever want to see, just so you know, you can see the code yourself. If you right click on it and then you go to edit easy language for IPO tool, you can actually see it. Now, one of you guys actually was asking me about it beforehand, and I added this little thing here. This is one gentleman who's asking about it because I had mentioned it on a different webinar. But basically, I commented these out. But if you want to see the original, the price from the first day of history, these two will do it. So basically, all we're doing here is we are first starting off by pulling history into RadarScreen. And when you see like on easy language close 1, that means that you want to look at like yesterday's close, and close 2 is the day before. But simply by running this, what we're doing is we're forcing RadarScreen to load history, because RadarScreen will not pull historical data unless it has to. So you need to do this first so it grabs that data. And then all we do is we basically plot. It will start from the beginning up to the most recent. So the very first bar is bar 1, and then it just goes right up to bar whatever, and then basically it shows current bar. That's how many bars of history it has. So if a company went public 40 sessions ago, trading sessions, it will plot out the number 40. And then I added this second little indicator that simply shows how far it is from its 52-week low. So that way you're always going to kind of see, like, you know, how much has it risen since the IPO. It's not going to be exactly from the IPO price, but it gives you a sense of what the price performance has been. Okay, so this is what it looks like in RadarScreen, but now I'm going to show you how to scan for it, because this is really the important thing. Now, I have a scan already built, and this is what it looks like after I run it. Now, the one thing about TradeStation that I wish I could do that I can't is I cannot share scans with you guys. Scanner, if I share the workspace, you're going to see a different scanner than I have, because Scanner is not saved in the workspace. So I'm going to show you how to build this scan. I'm going to just go ahead and actually create a new scan right now myself, the exact same one I have here. But I'm going to just rebuild it and show you from the very beginning, you know, how it works. So what I want to do is, in fact, I have it here in my PowerPoint. So let me just show you from my PowerPoint. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to create a scan. And let's just call it, I like to always put an exclamation point first, and then I'm going to date it 20201118. Right. And then I'm going to call it like IPOs, SPACs, right? Webinar, something like that. All right. Next, you want to define the universe of stocks. I'm going to do all stocks. Next, this is an important step now. This is where all the important things happen. One thing I want to see right off the bat is, you know, I want to eliminate companies that are not, you know, that are just random weird things that maybe are not relevant. So I want to exclude things that are not at least 100 million in market cap. So I'm going to select, let me just show you again how I did that. I go to criteria, and you'll see these different like categories of criteria come up. And this one is called capitalization. I'll go to that, market capitalization greater than 100. Now, it's important to realize when you're doing this that these pre-built fields that pop up here with these folders, these are included in Scanner, and they run like a zillion times faster than the indicators. So you want to use as many of these pre-built fields as possible, because it will reduce the number, it will narrow down your list before you do the real kind of intensive number crunching. So another thing I want to do is I want to see things, for example, that trade you know, a certain volume. So let's say things that trade, you know, volume average 10-day greater than, and this is a normal number, like just straight up, I'm going to write 100, 1, 2, 3, which is 100,000 shares a day. So now what I've done is I've basically eliminated a lot of random stocks, but it'll return, you know, still a huge number of stocks. So now we're going to use the custom indicator, and we're going to do that. If you imported it, you go down here, indicator. You'll notice that, and this is where it's more time, you know, intensive. Down at the bottom of this list, you see this thing that says indicator. All right, now it's going to pull up all the different indicators I have. And in this case, you should see exclamation point IPO tool as one of those indicators. Now, all right, I can't show it to you at this moment, but the thing is, this indicator, like I told you, it plots out, it will output two numbers. One is the number of the days of history that a company has and its percentage from the low. So you'll notice here that it asks you which of the two outputs you want to compare, and we're going to make sure it says days of history. And in this case, I'm going to simply say less than 150. Okay. Now I'm gonna do one more thing, and this is more of a little thing a little trick I learned just to kind of make my life easier. And I do this other indicator. It doesn't actually scan for anything, but it gives me a little information. I go to industry, okay, and then I say is not, which is this operator, and then I do quote, quote. Now the industry is going to output a string, a text string, a word. These other things are going to output numbers. So you have to put quotes. So you just have to realize sometimes if you're dealing with a string, hopefully you guys know what a data string, a text string is, it uses quotes. Other things are numeric. So, and when you work with easy language, sometimes if you're passing from a number to a text string, there's special ways to do that. And I'll teach that in other webinars I have. All right, so now I've built my criteria. I'm going to hit run. Can you show me how to load that tool? When I opened the TSW file in the zip file, I got the message a few items were deleted. So, all right, so while this is running, let me look at some of your questions. All right, so you said that some of the items were deleted. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to close that workspace and do not save it, okay? And then make sure you go back and you load this ELD file. Did you load the ELD file first? It should offer you this dialog box, the import wizard. Do that first. It might say something like it's overwriting some, it's a possibility, but make sure you run the ELD before you do the TSW. Okay. I joined. All right, so someone says, I joined a minute or two ago. Can you show me how to load that tool? Can you just tell me which tool in particular? You know, you might be asking, actually, let me make sure you know how to do this. Maybe I assume that you knew. All right, at the top of TradeStation here, we're using this tool called Scanner. Okay, at the top of TradeStation, you should see apps, and Scanner is the flashlight. You might have it over here somewhere because I dragged it here. You can drag these around, but you're going for Scanner, which is the flashlight. Also, if you're using the workspace I gave you, you should have, I'm pretty sure I saved Scanner to the workspace. So you can go to Window and you should see here it as a scanner. Also, if for some reason you don't have these app bar in place, you can right click on the workspace and go to new application and also go to scanner. All right, so it's loading here. So I'm going to show you now, basically, I created a very similar scan previously. I did a slightly different order, but this is what I came up with. Now, what is this? These are a list of symbols that have a certain amount of history. I think in this scan, I think I ran it for 50 days and not 150. But I want to show you this because the nice thing about this is by putting in the indicator industry, I basically said, just show me stuff that has a value, and every stock has a value for industry. But by doing it, by forcing it into scanner, what I'm doing is I'm letting myself suddenly, oh, I don't know what this company is. I don't know what this company is. Now I'm seeing right off the bat, very quickly, I can see, am I dealing with a retail stock? Am I dealing with a tech? Am I dealing with energy? Everything is going to be super visible right up front. And that's just it's a time saver, but having that extra column of valuable data can really save you some time. So this one is running over here. All right, good. Looks like you had the ELD file. Where did you get the IPO field? Okay. The IPO, is this the same question? No, it's a different one. The IPO field came from the special indicator, right? And when this is done running, I'm going to show you again. Well, I can just, all right, you can see on this one, I have this thing called IPO tool, exclamation point IPO tool. If you have loaded the ELD file, okay, and and you imported those indicators, if you click on select criteria and you go down to indicator, it should list IPO tool alphabetically near the top, exclamation point IPO underscore tool. You should see it, and then you'll notice that it has two different values, days of history and percent from low, and we want days of history. Okay, this one is almost done. So if we go back to this output, if I look at this stock, wait a second, that's the wrong one. Okay, all right, here's my output, and it returned 139 stocks. So I can now sort by what's the newest and what's the the oldest. Now this is my radar screen, but I'm going to just hide this one for a second, and I want to show you what I've done is I have linked this scanner. I have linked the scanner to two other tools that are included in the radar screen. Here's the charting. You'll notice there's this green icon up here. This is called symbol linking. So I can change, I could make it cyan and I could make that one cyan. You can link things together. So this is just a way that you can, if you click on this, it's going to automatically load that chart. It's going to load that symbol automatically. It's also going to automatically load that symbol into the news tool. And then you can actually go and find these articles. So these are other indicators. They're both linked with symbol linking. All right, so now we've generated a list of new companies, and you can quickly just kind of go through and look at them. You can quickly see right off the bat, there's a lot of biotechnology stocks. That's always the way it goes. And then you can also very quickly, identify them by size and what trades the most. So, for example, it's interesting. We have there's Palantir. It's been public for 35 days. We have Li, which is this new Chinese auto company. XPEV is another electric vehicle company. So these companies have gotten very popular very fast. Okay, that's Scanner. Hopefully this is clear how to use Scanner. Now the thing is about Scanner is that it can scan the entire universe of stocks. Let me go back to my PowerPoint. This is basically what I just ran. So this will find stocks with limited price histories and display their industries, allowing easy review. Most will be IPOs and SPACs. So you can also scan using other tools in here. Like, so for example, if you're doing one of these scans, you can also say, I want to see, for example, revenue that is, revenue. I'm trying to see if you go here to you go to profitability, okay, and then you go to revenues, and then you go to revenue percentage change, TTM. That's going to then find companies, over whatever, because you might want a certain threshold. Let's say it has positive revenue growth, for example. Let's also go to revenues. And now we're going to go to revenues TTM, which is going to be the actual dollar amount. And this is going to be in millions. Okay, so this means basically what is the annual revenue on the trailing 12-month basis. See, now this is all done in RadarScreen. I mean, in Scanner. And these values are all going to come in very quickly because they're all built in. The only ones that are slow are IPO tool and industry. So now I can run this again, and now it's going to go through and look. So now the thing is, you're going to find a bunch of biotech stocks that have no revenue, or they have a little bit of like licensing or some kind of milestone revenue, but they're not really like operational companies yet that are selling products. And there's always a lot of those companies. Some of them do well, a lot of them don't. A lot of them are hard to understand. They don't trade a lot. So if you want to, weed those out, you can use this. I want to also just mention some of these histories in Scanner will look at 5 years of history. You don't want to do that because obviously some of these companies might not exist that long. So when you do these, I would just look in general for things like revenue over 100 million. For example, that's going to weed out a bunch of companies that are not really operational yet. Okay, so what does Scanner do? Scanner searches a whole symbol universe. It has pros and cons. The con is that it's slower. Like you saw, it took like 5 minutes to run the search. And you can actually sometimes, if you're not careful, Scanner can be grinding away for like an hour. The nice thing about Scanner though also is that you can program it to run every week. So every week you can have a scan run and go and look at it. It can run overnight or something. But Scanner is slower, and it only displays values in the search. So that's the reason why I did this little hack of putting in industry, equals quote quote, or it does not equal quote quote, because we're not saying we only want to see this industry or that industry. We're basically tricking the tool into displaying a value that we want to see that we can then use for sorting. And now actually I think it just ran, and here we actually see we can now sort by revenue. Interesting. ACI is Albertsons, the grocery chain. I'm pretty sure it's Albertsons, which recently went public. But here you can actually go through again. And here's what I meant about IAC. This is the old Interactive, which had a split with Match. So this is not actually an IPO. This is a spinoff. But you're mostly going to find, Albertsons was an IPO. Here we have Unity Software, which has been well known recently. So wanted to just kind of mention that you can add fundamental data in Scanner as well with the method I just taught you. Okay, so it only displays the value. So for example, if you load a bunch of stocks into Scanner, you cannot then say, I want to see them, I want to now rank them by year-to-date change. Can't do that. You'd have to use an indicator saying, show me year-to-date change greater than minus 99%, for example. Then it would have that as a column, and then you could sort by the column. But the great thing about Scanner is it finds stuff. And RadarScreen does not find stuff. It only works with lists that you give it. So the good thing about RadarScreen is you can do all kinds of analysis on it, and you can put in all kinds of columns, and you can see values and run indicators on all those different columns like I'm going to show you. The drawback is it requires a list of symbols that you have to give it. And then the other thing about RadarScreen is it can only track 1,000 symbols at a time. So really, these are two things that you just want to use together. It's like a hammer and an anvil. They're two tools. They both have their purpose, and they're best used when you know how to use them together. And that's what I'm going to show you now. All right, so we have our list. Here's something we can do. We can now just go and copy this. And now I'm going to go back out and rerun this. I copied it, and I'm going to bring it into RadarScreen. So I have my RadarScreen. I can go back to it here by just this little window button here. Boom. There it is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically I'm going to add it at the bottom. All right. So I'm going to paste these in. Okay. And now I'm going to go back and rerun this scan. And I'm going to remove these criteria. So I want more companies now. And I'm going to run this. It'll take a little bit of time. All right, RadarScreen. This is the real deal now, because now we can do all kinds of stuff once we have our information in RadarScreen. So what are we looking at now? You'll notice the exact same tool that I used in Scanner. Here it is in RadarScreen, and it shows both with outputs. So I pasted all these companies in, and now that I have them, I can click on the columns and I can sort by all these different columns. So this was the group that I had loaded before over the weekend when I was preparing. And, basically these values though are going to be up to date. So what do I see? Now, these are all indicators that all right, good. All right. These are different indicators. Some of them are included in TradeStation, and some of them I created and shared in that ELD file. So this indicator I shared in the ELD file. Now I want to mention that you'll notice that I put a little line of code in here. I'm going to go back to the easy language. It's a little trick I do that can also help you kind of track things. And what I do is if it's looking at SPY, then it highlights in a different color. Background color. All right, so if the symbol is SPY, then set the plot background color for plot 2 to dark brown. And what that means is if I have a whole list of stocks, I can literally just add SPY right to the list. Okay, and now I can sort, and I can look, okay, these are like these are above SPY and these are below SPY. It allows me to quickly benchmark things to the S&P 500. So it's just a little trick, and that's the reason why you're seeing that in that amber color. Next, sector. This is an included, sector and industry are very similar. Those are both indicators that are built into TradeStation. You guys already have them. Market cap, built into TradeStation, you already have it. Revenue growth. This is one that I created. And what this basically does is this gives you two things. It tells you the trailing 12-month revenue growth in percent, and then it also tells you the actual number. So you're not looking at a company with like $4 million of revenue. So you can see right off the bat, here we have, it's interesting, an insurance company that went public 15 days ago. It's growing 136%. And, it has a decent, it's not a tiny company. I mean, it's not huge, but it's not some little non-existent company either. You can see Snowflake here and things like this. I've actually noticed there's a series of unusual insurance companies that have gone public in the last couple of years, like BRP and Goosehead, GSHD. There's something happening in the insurance space appears to be getting disrupted. I don't know much about it, but I've noticed there's a few of these companies that are using new sort of digital marketing techniques and kind of rethinking the traditional insurance business model, and they seem to be growing very quickly. Anyway, I wanted to just mention that, but I didn't even know about this company called Root. Now, again, if I click on it, I have my symbol linking in place. I can look over here and we can see this company is called Root Inc. So went public and it hasn't been doing great. However, I think the important thing also I just want to mention about IPOs is, usually in my experience, I find that most IPOs do not perform well in the beginning. Usually it's after about 100 to 200 days of history that they start getting interesting. So, you can, tinker with these numbers. Maybe some of these companies go public. They have lockups, people selling shares in the beginning. There's a lot of weird stuff on them. But after, 100 to 200 sessions, they start getting added to indexes. They start picking up analyst coverage. And it can be good to kind of watch them. And the great thing is with some of these indicators right off the bat, you can basically see some of their fundamentals. Okay, this next indicator, net income growth. I created this one as well. This is custom. It's in the ELD that you loaded. So I'm using, if we actually go net income growth for all symbols. All right. So what is this? This is a special thing in easy language, or a functionality of easy language that can grab fundamental values out of our server. And the thing is, sometimes when you do queries, there's no data. And so it returns like an error. So you need to have this little error code thing to handle that. And this is the syntax you're going to use. Now, I'm going to share with one other thing with you guys, because it may or may not be super easy to find. A whole slew of fundamental values, PE ratios and EPS growth and book value. There's like 500 of them. They are available at a link that I'm going to give you now. I would bookmark this. Bookmark this link. And if we go to it, I'm going to jump over to it in my browser. And so you see all these values, right? These are the values that are here, this code. So why did I call it PQ? I called it PQ because that's exactly what our feed calls it, which means previous quarter. I'd like to do things so I don't get confused. I like to, if there's one thing that is called something in the master document, I copy that nomenclature, because that way when I look at it later and I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at, it's simpler. So this is the actual easy language that shows how this works. You guys have access to this. If you right click on the indicator, go to studies, edit easy language, that'll bring up that screen. All right, so what are we seeing? Net income growth in the most recent quarter, trailing 12-month net income growth. Now the problem is a lot of IPOs might not have a profitable trailing 12 months. They might have a profitable quarter. So it's just something to think about. And then, of course, I'm doing the same thing. I want to actually see the net income. Is it a company that made like $2, or is it a company that's making, a more normal, kind of amount of money, when you actually know that it's an ongoing company? And that's why I like to look at market cap. I like to look at revenue amount, and I like to look at net income amount. See all those things together, it will allow me to quickly size up the companies. And of course, the other nice thing is, let's just say, hey, we don't want to see a company that trades less than 100, has less than 100 million of revenue. We sort on that revenue column, and we just select right there, hold down the shift, go down, and then hit delete. Goodbye. Now we can go back and resort by, okay, now we have our list. All right, now let's see who's newest and who's not. All right, my scanner should have completed by now. And yeah, so I'm going to go back now and just redo this list. This is the list closer to what you guys would have had before. So I want to be just working with a similar list. I took out that fundamental data. So this is just a list of companies that have 100 million market cap, 100,000 shares a day, and also are 150 days of price history. So this is that list in the scanner you guys did. It's populating now. I just erased everything and re-inputted it. And here's my list. All right. I always like looking, like I said, by market cap also. It's just kind of good to know. All right. The next thing is this indicator called next earnings date. This will tell us, some of these don't always load right away. Let me try and, this is loading data right now. I did a webinar on this is a new function that we recently created. This goes in and actually finds the company's upcoming earnings date, and then it populates it. The nice thing about this is you can easily go and then see, okay, this company reports earnings in like very soon, and some of these are estimated versus confirmed earnings dates, so you can see, and then you can sort based on how long until they have earnings. It's just good to kind of know if does a company report earnings tomorrow or do they report already. So it's just another useful thing to know when you're surveying a large list of companies. Next, you have the price to earnings. Now, the problem with this is that sometimes, like I said, when a company is relatively new, the fundamental data might not be accurate yet. And that's just something, but it's still good to know. Have a quick look at the PE ratio. And then finally, these are two custom indicators I created that are basically very simple. They just show 5D, which is like 5 days of price history in 21 days. You'll notice that I have this same little trick with SPY in here because I like to do this. If I look at my list here and I put in SPY, see, it's loading all this history. Sorry, if I go back now, what it's going to do is it's going to allow me to benchmark and to see how things compare. It's going to load, but basically I can see, SPY in the last month is up maybe 10%, and it's going to put a line right where the S&P is with that coloring, and it's going to allow me to see who's outperforming, who's underperforming. I like to just be able to quickly see. So with this, right off the bat, I can see a wide range of companies. I can arrange things according to who's doing well and who's doing poorly. If I want, I can then say, anything that's down in the last 5 weeks, I want to kill or whatever. You sort by these columns, and it allows you to assess this large list. Okay. So basically, these are some of the things that this is what I basically just showed you. You're going to copy and paste the tickers from Scanner, and then these columns exist for you. Next, I'm going to show you guys how to set alerts. So say you find an IPO that interests you for some reason and you want to come back to it, you can then set alerts on it. And I'm going to show you another way to do that. So let me just make sure. I want to see one thing. I want to make sure I gave you guys this indicator. I think I did. No, I didn't. All right. So let me see. All right. So basically, I'm going to create, for the sake of ease, I'm going to create all right. I'm going to create another page. So add new page blank. And let's just add our list again here. Should still be in memory. Boom. All right. Now, so be careful with RadarScreen. It will always default to 5-minute candles. So you're going to go Control A, select all, time frame set to daily. You'll notice the interval change. Now I want to get rid of a lot of these columns. I want to get rid of daily interval. I want to keep last, and then I want to get rid of like net change. I want to get rid of bid, ask, high, low, and volume. And I want to add two. So I go to studies, add study, and I'm going to add moving average one line. And I'm going to add moving average exponential. Boom. Now these by default, I think default to 9. So you're going to go to edit. Let's say you want like the 50-day moving average. You would change. What you would do is you would now go, let me go back and do that again. So this is going to show, and I'm going to make this smaller so we can see the chart more easily. Here's our chart. And remember, it's still linked to our radar screen. So if I click on this, it's going to populate the chart. Now, here we have our chart. Let's do the 50-day moving average. You know, this is a common one. You can do whatever you want. Add study. So you go to studies, add study. Then you're going to go to moving average one line. By the way, I strongly recommend using moving average one line for IPOs. And the reason is if a company doesn't have a lot of history, if it doesn't have like 200 days of history, if you try and put 3 lines on there and say, I want to see the 50, the 100, and the 200, and if it doesn't have 200 days of history, the whole indicator might not work. So there's a lot of nice things about the moving average with 3 lines, but the thing is, when you're dealing with companies with limited price history, you have to be careful because it might block the entire indicator. So I like to always keep it simple, moving average one line. So let's just add the 50. I like to use red for my 50-day moving average. I'm going to go to color. I'm going to set it to red. I'm going to just make it a little thicker. And boom, now you see a 50-day moving average. All right. So that's a 50-day. Now let's add the 21-day exponential. All right, so what I'm going to do now is, so here's our moving average one line. I have to make the same change here. Edit moving average, for all symbols, I'm going to just change it to 50. All right, now I'm going to add exponential. I'm going to go to studies, edit studies. I'm going to change it to 21. I'm going to add that. I'm going to add it 21 to my chart as well. Studies, add study, moving average exponential. I'm going to set it inputs to 21 days. I'm going to set my color. I like to make this one like a goldish color. Boom. Okay. Let's find one that's doing better, actually. I'm going to first go back now. I'm going to sort. Let's sort these by like, well, here's another trick I'm just going to show you right off the bat. You already have like that 21D indicator. I'm going to go to one more study, add studies. I'm going to go to the 21D, which I gave you. And now I'm going to add that. And now suddenly you're going to notice, now I can actually see who's doing the best, who's up the most in the last 21 sessions, which is a month. Okay. Now I have, all right, let's just say we have a high momentum stock and we're waiting for a pullback. Okay. So here we go. XPEV, for example. This is one of these, I think, Chinese electric car makers. All right, here it is. It's flying. Say we want to pull back to $30, for example, something like that. So there's a few ways to program kind of alerts for that. I mean, I would actually set a pullback down here closer to, say, 36. So what I would do for XPEV, there's a couple of ways to set alerts very quickly. You can go to last, double click on it, and then you're going to set your alert, like your high alert. I would set it, we want the pullback. So I'm going to set the lower alert to like 34. I'm going to set to alert. Actually, I wanted to set it to 36. Set it to like 36. I'm going to set my alerts to enable alert continuously, boom. You'll notice it now has that little dot that indicates there's an alert. If you hover, it will tell you where the alert is set. Okay, that's just a simple line. Say we want to find the pullback to the exponential moving average. Then we double click on that one. And then we go to inputs, and now go to inputs, and all right, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to look for it to cross the moving average. So you go to alerts, and then you say enable alert continuously, boom. Now, when this stock crosses that, it's going to light up. And then the same thing for this one. You can just go here to, alert, and you can actually right click. I'm sorry, you can right click right on the cell and then just go to alert, enable alert continuously. Now, if it pulls back to the simple moving average, which is this 50-day moving average, it's going to start flashing on your screen. Same thing if it pulls back to this moving average, the exponential. And if it pulls back to the $36 line, which would be right around here, it's going to start flashing on your screen. So this is something I like to do. I actually have a workspace, and this is another best practice I've created for myself. I have my own personal workspace that where there's stocks I track that maybe I want to buy or something. And what I do is I have maybe 200 in RadarScreen, and I program these alerts into them, and then I save it. And I don't do much else with that workspace because I don't want it to crash. I don't use it for research. So you might want to have a workspace with a RadarScreen that is dedicated to alerts. If you find a stock that interests you, you can have it in that workspace, and then keep that to itself. And save it, because it's really annoying when you lose, you do all this research, you figure out the levels you want, and then for some reason you forget to save your workspace. Don't do that. I have. Okay, let me get back to your questions now. Those are the main things I wanted to show you guys. I don't have okay. I don't have next earnings date columns. Some of you guys might not have gotten this yet. I'm going to show you something else that was on. All right, so all right, over here on Market Insights, if you go to Education Platform, like I said, this is a relatively new functionality, and it might not have rolled out to everyone. So you see this guy, earnings season has begun. Here's how to make the most of it. This outlines how to download this this indicator. So you go down here and it says next earnings date. This is in the trading app store. You might need to clear your cache on your browser. Sometimes it does that. What you're going to do is you're going to, it's going to ask you to log in. It's going to save some information. And then what's going to happen is in a couple of hours, you're going to get an email telling you that it has installed this indicator. And then you will have it. I did a webinar on it last month. Can we watch the webinar again on YouTube? Yes, it should be on YouTube again. Can you please provide the workspace? You should have the link to it, but I will share it with you one more time. It is in, the workspace is in this zip file. The ELD and the zip file are both there. All right, let me just see. PLTR, yep, there's one of our Palantir. Okay, I'm just making sure I didn't miss any questions. Trade volume was my question. All right, so you said trade volume was my question. Can you tell me what can you just retype in the question for me? How do you load the columns? Okay, there's a couple you'll ask about the next earnings date. I guess it hadn't hit your platforms yet. What I'd also mention is I'd suggest that you close this workspace that I have that I've shared with you. Don't save it, because it might delete it out of the RadarScreen. Just close it. Don't save it. If you did save it already, just erase it and reload it from the zip file after you have gotten the thing to work from the trading app store. If you go through that to the trading app store, it's going to prompt you to log into your client center. You're going to just accept this, and then like in a couple of hours, you're going to get an email saying it's there, and it's going to appear up here in trading app store updates. You're going to actually see it pop up in here. I have a few things here that are been here for a while, but anyway, it'll come in there, and then you'll launch it from there, and then you'll have the indicator, and that indicator you can access also in RadarScreen. Okay, folks. So like I said, what's the deal with TradingView? Is that a free add-on for TS clients? TradingView is something that is for people who want to. TradingView is an outside charting service. It's not a brokerage. It links to us. And if you actually look, we have a page for it. I can just quickly show you as well. I'd encourage you guys, a lot of things I mentioned, if you go to, Market Insights, I have articles written about a lot of them. If you go to this one, earnings season has begun. Here's how to make the most of it. This has a link to that, to the earnings data indicator. Also, if you click on this category that says platform, I've written some articles recently about our relationships with TradingView. Attention, wait, where is the TradingView? TradeStation Crypto is now available on TradingView. And then if you actually go into this, last year we wrote this when we linked the equity accounts to TradingView. And if you actually go in here, there is this page which explains a lot of how the actual offer works. But TradingView is just an outside service. I like to look at it on my phone, and if I'm not at my desk, I have it's nice because you can you can access your account from without having the whole desktop platform installed. It doesn't have RadarScreen, a lot of things we use all the time, but it's another kind of nice add-on that you might find interesting. All right. Is the alert still working if the workspace is not open? No, you have to have the workspace open. Is it possible to sort by multiple fields? No, you have to sort one field at a time. Can you show it a scan on 5 VWAP using RadarScreen with an alert on 1 standard deviation limits? That's an interesting question. I'm going to do, I'm going to save your question, and I'm going to try to get an answer. I'm going to try and answer that for you. And it's a really good question. And we can look for, I don't know if I'll do it in a future webinar, but I could do it in an article that would outline it. And also, all right, I'm going to share my email. If you do Russell TradeStation, if you have more questions, you can email me here. All right, folks, it's great to talk to everyone. Like I said, just check what we have here on Market Insights and stuff. We published a lot of this information. And like I said, this is, many ways when we're getting into something like this, it's a new world with a new series of companies. We don't always, there's, in many ways, we're at the mercy of S&P to add people to the index. We're at the mercy of analysts to find stuff. We're at the mercy of journalists to find these companies that exist. You can leapfrog ahead of all of them by basically tracking. And every week you can look at, bam, what are the new companies that just popped up? You can find them yourself, and you can completely, keep up with anyone else, because a lot of these people are using things like Bloomberg or other services that cost a lot of money to find these companies. Well, you know what? You can do that exact same thing, for free, built into your TradeStation platform. So it's great to talk to everyone. Next month, I'm going to be doing an Art of TradeStation about ways to really analyze things by sectors, and understanding where the sectors and areas of strength are in the market. So hope to see some of you guys with that as well. There will be some information provided. It's going to be in the middle of December. So I do these once a month, and it's always great to talk to everyone. Thank you very much, and I'm going to leave it open for a few more minutes if you want to shoot me any more questions. But it's great, and have a great day, guys. I mean, if you want to ask me questions in chat, I'll answer in chat. Bye-bye. Okay, I see one question that I'm just going to go ahead and show you. Can you show us? All right, I'm just go back and really quickly show you. How do you add the alert? Okay, go to RadarScreen, dump in your list of stocks, and you want to have last net change. You can add moving average one line or moving average exponential. And you go to studies, add study. I'm gonna just kill this so you can see. 1, 2. All right, let's add for a simple price. You're just gonna go and you go to last, you double click on the value for the column, then you go to inputs, and then you're gonna set, I don't know, say you want to see this one at $50, for example. Set to 50, set to alerts, set to enable alert, alert continuously, like that. If you want to set it to a moving average, you're going to go to study, add study. You, like I said, add moving average one line, right? Add it. Now you're going to have to make sure it's set to the correct moving average. So let's set it to the 50-day moving average. You're going to right click on the column, edit moving average one line for all symbols. You're going to change the input to like 50. And then you're going to just set and then you're going to set okay. And then you're going to right click, and then you're going to go to alert, and then you're going to go to enable alert continuously. That way, if this stock XPEV hits its 50-day moving average, it's going to start lighting up on your radar screen. All right, next, you were asking about how do I add the description to scanner. So what you just do here is that that's an indicator. So if I actually look, I added this. So in this case, say for example, I'm going to just remove IPO tool to make it go faster. Industry is a scanner. So I can just go and I can go here to, for example, I go to indicator, and then there's a few different indicators I might want to add. I could add description is actually going to be the company name. I'm pretty sure it has that here. Okay, I cannot find that, but we do have industry. Okay. Boom. Add that. Industry, and then is not, which is these two symbols here, and then quote, quote. And now I'm going to hit run. And it's basically going to find all these companies and show their industries. So that's the way to do that. How do you add the moving average? It goes all the way to the left of the chart. If you're on the chart, you go to studies, add study, and then you're going to choose. That's a moving average exponential, which is going, I'm pretty sure an exponential moving average doesn't need all the history because it's exponential. It's calculated differently. It'll simply weight because it doesn't need, I don't think, all the history to calculate. That's an moving average exponential. And then once you bring it in, you're going to then, it asks you what kind you want, and then you're going to go to inputs. Okay. Is the scanner part of TradeStation 10? The answer is yes. Okay, folks, been great talking to everyone. Hope you have a great month. Hope I see you again soon. And don't forget to check out Market Insights. Take care.